sinks in somewhere.
Yeah. Well, hello, and welcome to Intercultural Spark, that show about how you too can spark change in the world through your mission-driven businesses and life projects. I am your host, Deanna Schaas, and if you're watching live or after the fact, thank you so much for the gift of joining us today or after the fact. And I hope you're inspired by today's guest to jump into action in your own life. So speaking of today's guest, the U.S. Embassy sent Marc Warzecha to Latvia and Norway to teach U.S.-style comedy. He wrote and performed for the Second City for 20 years. He's been on Wolf Blitzer's The Situation Room, and he's currently celebrating the one-year anniversary of the school he founded, the Sketch School in L.A., and it's the only school dedicated 100% to short-form comedy and sketch, and it's available online and around the world. So for anyone who thinks you haven't made it until you're famous, or you said, I love my job, but I hate this part, you will love to listen in to my conversation with Marc and how Marc has designed his ideal life. So welcome to Intercultural Spark. Hey, good morning.
Hey, thank you so much for that wonderful intro. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like on that note, should we be like, and thank you very much. You've been a great audience. Oh, well, I'm so excited you're here. And, you know, Marc, you have said, so we had a chance to talk a little bit ahead of time. You said when you were coming up with the Second City in Detroit that you were performing with some of the big up and comers who are now well known. Someone who struck me was Keegan-Michael Key from Key and Peele, you know, and also other movies. So my first question for you is, does Keegan-Michael Key know that you think he's boring?
He is not boring. He is packed full of energy 24/7. That's for sure.
Oh, well, you had said what I found interesting, though, is that a lot of people would think that's such a big deal, like to be at the Second City, to be on stage with these great names. And you were saying that that was part of what started your journey to really focusing on sketch, is that you were kind of bored. So what was that? What was that like? I guess, what were you doing and what was it like? And how did it emerge, like the parts that you liked?
One of the wonderful things about working at the Second City Comedy Theater is that you have to work on several different skills. If you're on that stage, if you're in the main stage company there, which I was lucky enough to be able to be in, you are on stage as an actor. You are using improvisation to create new material and new sketches, and you are using writing skills as well. So you're using all these different skills. And then most people through that process find that there's one thing that they gravitate towards a little more than the other stuff. And what became clear to me was I didn't enjoy performing the show night after night after night, the scripted finished show. I got bored within the first week. got bored immediately. I started doing bits. I started to mess with my cast members in the sketches. I started to make things up, change the lines. I was bored. I didn't like it. But in contrast, I was in cast of Second City Detroit with Keegan, for example, and some other fantastic performers. And I could see that they loved doing it 8 shows a week, right? Their real true passion was getting up there and performing it consistently over and over and over and over again. So over a couple of years of doing that, I discovered that what I liked was the creative process, creating the show, writing the sketches, putting the show together. But I didn't love acting in the way that they loved acting. So I gravitated more towards the writing, teaching side of things rather than performance, and really only performed for a few years and now have not for a very long time. And I don't miss it.
You know, it's funny because as a marketer, which is my background, you know, we say if a tree falls in the forest and nobody sees it, like, did it even happen? And so it's that idea of nobody sees those parts, maybe more now because there's been shows about writing rooms, but nobody really sees the part behind the scenes. So how did you transition from being in the limelight? You know, because you at one point you had to say, well, I may not get public recognition for this, but I'm going to pursue what I want to do. How did that feel?
Yeah, it's a moment, right? Or for me, it was a process, because when you get an opportunity, like you get at the Second City, and you think of all the famous names of all the famous alumni that have come through the Second City through generations, from Joan Rivers and Ed Asner, who, rest in soul, just passed, right? Like early days of Second City.
I didn't realize he came up through Second City. Ed Asner did?
Yeah, he came up from that same crowd, back in the early days. And then, multi-generations, right? There's the Tina Fey generation, or the Mike Myers, or the Stephen Colberts, and then the folks we know today. So when you have an opportunity to be part of that as a performer, you're certainly thinking, here's an opportunity, right, to become a rich and famous actor, right? But then I, as I just described, discovered pretty quickly that I didn't love that part of it as much as I thought. That my passion was towards the teaching, writing side. And so you do realize when you're moving in that direction, although there are some well-known, writer teachers in the world, that when you're moving in that direction, you're surrendering up, right? Some of those goals and some of those aspirations, and getting okay with that. For me, was a process. There were times I really struggled with it, especially when I'd seen people I came up with have huge success as performers.
Did you feel like you were a little bit jealous? Like, well, I could do that too.
I wouldn't say I would like to. I wouldn't say jealous was the first thing that comes up. I think the first thing that comes up is regret. Like, should I have kept going as a performer? I think more in that direction. But when I write something that gets put up on stage, or am teaching and really enjoying it, I feel a sense of creative and artistic fulfillment that I never did in the same way when performing.
Interesting.
And you feel like ultimately this is where I should be. Like, this is where I belong. This is where my passion is, and I love it.
Well, and your passion led you to opening the sketch school, which we'll throw that up there. The sketch school, which is your business now coming up. You have your 1-year anniversary, I think, in a week. And when people talk about finding your niche market, I was thinking, can you give just a little bit context for our viewers who may not, because sketch is really specific within the area of comedy. Can you help frame that just so people understand how specific that is?
Yes. I mean, we hear a lot about stand-up comedy, about improv comedy. And then when you think, there are a lot of great sketch institutions as well. The Second City is an improv institution, but also sketch. The Groundlings is a great sketch theater. And then, of course, you have the sketch shows like Key and Peele, like HBO's A Black Lady Sketch Show, like Chappelle's Show, like Inside Amy Schumer, like, of course, SNL or Mad TV or SCTV or Carol Burnett, right? Like, we have decades of great sketch, both in theater and on television here in the US. And then you have sketch from all over the world. There are iconic British shows, right? Some of them have crossed over here, like Monty Python. And there are wonderful comedy institutions that teach classes. There were none that were teaching what is my first passion and love, which is sketch comedy exclusively. Nobody was teaching that exclusively. And so I thought that because this is my passion and because I love teaching, that there was an opportunity here to create a place that is focused specifically on just sketch and being great at doing sketch and teaching sketch. And so that's become our niche.
I wonder, as you're saying that, when we think of sketch being short form comedy, and how with the internet, people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, are you finding, like, what are your students looking for? Are they looking to write for shows? Are people just creating and putting stuff out on the internet as well?
That's such a great question. Yes, it's been very interesting. I think in any one particular workshop we have, it typically breaks down like this. About 20% of the people are completely new to writing, completely new to comedy writing, completely new to sketch writing. They're mostly artists or artistically inclined in one way or another, and have always wanted to try this. And I love when those folks come to us, because I remember being that person, not knowing where to turn. And I hope that we can like provide a safe place for people to come and explore that side of themselves artistically. Then I'd say about 60% of the students in any one workshop, the writers in any one workshop, are people who are kind of doing this. They're involved in the world. They're taking classes at this places in that place. They know they have a passion for it. They're writing a little bit. They want to hone their skills. And about 20% of the people that we've got are lapsed writers. I used to do this all the time, and it slipped away from me, and I miss it. And I want to take this workshop to come back. So it's a combination. We try to meet everybody where they are.
You know, what's fascinating with that is, so a lot of the people who I work with or watch the show are people that tend to be in the second half of life. They are pursuing, you know, like I said before, mission-driven projects or life projects, but it's also that thing of, I wish I always would have. And what I'm realizing is what you offer is the type of thing that certainly I know someone like me looks for, which is, oh, I always wanted to write funny, or I always wanted to do this. And that, so you actually are providing the school where that gives other people the opportunity to follow their passions and dreams.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, there are definitely a fair amount of writers that we get, of artists that we get, of participants that we get that are that person that are like, I always wish I tried this. And then they try it, and they're trying it with us. And that's really exciting. And some of those people find that they're really passionate about sketch and want to pursue it more aggressively. And some of those people just enjoy the artistic experience and hope it enhances the other writing they do, their comedy perspective in general, right? Like they're not necessarily trying to get on the writing staff at SNL, but they're hoping that the class informs the rest of what they're doing in their life and career.
Which I love how accessible it is then, because like you said, it could just be people want to write funnier or just be funnier. I always say that my whole goal as I age is to have people besides me laugh at my jokes. I know I've said that before. So it's like a life goal for me. But I
laughed at that one.
Yeah, thank you. I know, I have to work on my timing though, because I laugh first. So now it's like I have to let them laugh first. But I noticed that your pricing though is very accessible. So what's fascinating is that with that accessible model that you're attracting both like people who are well established, but also people who are new, including you're coming up on your 1-year anniversary. And I saw the whole thing is free, but very exclusive. Like it's free, but for 12 people.
Yes.
Talk about that, because that's like 12 people out of the whole scope of the world. So it looks like you're just really making sure that you're going deep and meaningful connection.
It depends. Yeah, it depends on the workshop. Sometimes we are limiting the number of participants. Sometimes there's no cap. It will depend on the content of the workshop, the instructor of the workshop. So we do sometimes have lecture style workshops where any amount of people can join. Our Zoom limit is, 99 people can be in the meeting, and any number of people can join. But sometimes, like the workshops we're having for our anniversary weekend with Kevin McDonald, who's one of the members of the Kids in the Hall, those are capped at 12, and that's at Kevin's request because he wants to have a highly personal experience with a small group where he can really get in there and work on folks' sketches with them one-on-one and have everyone function as a writer's room. So for that workshop, it's capped. So we do both. We do a range, and it depends on the artistic needs.
That's wonderful. Now, wonderful in the sense of I love the accessibility and that it's like real people, and that Kevin, who's now been very successful, wants to create that meaningful experience, which is so special for the person. By the way, just my own little 2 cents. When you see stuff like that online, people, if you see workshops and things like that online, don't be like, oh, I'll sign up later. That stuff fills up. I do the Irma Bombeck workshop, and I think it fills up within like 3 hours of the moment that registration opens. So
Kevin's workshop sold out with
like in 5 minutes.
2 hours, and now we've got a waiting list, and hopefully going to have him back soon.
You know what's exciting about that though is it's exciting that people feel alive. You know what I mean though? But that people feel alive, that they're pursuing stuff, that people aren't afraid to take risks or to just learn. Because I mean, what is life if it's not an upward trajectory of just always learning new things?
Yes. And I love that. Like we really, really encourage that and try to position our workshops, our free events, our Q&As, all the things we do. We try to position them so they're accessible to a wide range
Love
of
that.
people and folks that would come to us for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want it to feel too cliquey or too exclusive.
Yes, right. So people come back. So again, just a reminder for people who are watching live, we encourage you to say hello or ask questions as we go. But I want to kind of a sort of a shift from accessibility. You know, commentary or not commentary, comedy is often a commentary on current events and the news. How did you end up delivering the news per se as a guest on Wolf Blitzer on The Situation Room? What was that context and what were you talking about?
Oh, they were nice enough to have myself on with a couple of sketch friends that I was working with. We had created we were making at the time a lot of strongly satiric political videos. And the folks in this particular group and I had made a video that was sort of it was during Barack Obama's presidency. It was a very pro Obama video that went a little bit viral. They heard about it, played it, and had us on to talk about it a little bit, which was very cool. But satire in general is definitely a passion of mine and what drew me more than anything to the world of sketch comedy. I loved that I could watch the presidential debate and then a couple days later turn on Saturday Night Live and see a satiric take on it. Like before I even kind of knew what satire was as a kid, I would love seeing that. So not all sketch comedy is satire, but it can be. And sketch can be even though it's so short, can be a really effective way to make a satiric point in a short time period with some laughs. So I love sketch for satire.
Is there anyone that struck you when you say, because I love that too. I love how people, it's almost like they make a commentary and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, like you feel like you're sucked in on the following the storyline. And all of a sudden there's that twist that makes you realize there's a commentary that you didn't expect. Is there something that stands out, or what's the first one that comes to your mind when I say like, what's a funny satire commentary that you saw?
Yeah, well, I mean, one that hooked me when I was an audience member at the Second City in Detroit, and there used to be a Second City in Detroit. Was because Second City is Detroit is very segregated in a lot of ways, and they did a wonderful sketch there in one of the first shows I ever saw, where a white couple was downtown and their car, for whatever reason, their car broke down. They got stuck downtown and they wandered into a soul food restaurant owned by a black couple. And these two couples who would not otherwise probably interact in Detroit, talk about their kids, get to know each other a little bit. And I found it to be a very funny and powerful piece when I was first coming to see comedy theater. And it was one that grabbed me and pulled me in for sure.
I absolutely love satire for that. It's a lot of fun. There's actually I don't know if you know about this. It's a woman named Caitlin Kunkel and a few other people created a satire festival, and it was in New York. Oh my God, I'll send you the link afterwards.
Please.
So much fun. And actually the people on it were like Jen Spira, like a lot of the writers for a lot of the late night shows. Just a lot of fun. I'll send it to you. But there's this whole community that built around this satire festival.
Oh my God, yes, please.
So,
yes, please. Yes, please.
For sure. So you know what's actually fun about that? I have to say that just because I look at you and your level of expertise and everything that you do, and it's that idea you can always learn something new. The fact that the two of us right here, I like sitting in my little basement in Chicago, just showed something to you that probably is actually going to be a great connection and resource.
Those people are about to become my best friends.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So, I do just want to emphasize how much you've done, because people always think when someone becomes famous, you've had this show that your school now, it's coming up on a year, very successful. And they think, oh, he's so lucky. He's so lucky. Like he just has a school now and it's great. And I was looking more about you down to, you had your own public access show at like 16. You've written so many plays, like you've worked hard. Like you talk just a little bit about that for scope in terms of how hard you've worked and then how all of a sudden like it comes together.
I mean, I have done this my entire adult life. I started when I was about 15 doing sketch comedy. I did a public access sketch comedy show with other friends of mine in high school in Dearborn Heights, Michigan.
Did your parents at least watch it? Like, who watched it? 'Cause you guys were high school kids.
I think about 15 people watch it every week. Family members, friends.
Yeah.
And then we, out of that, did our own, rented a space, community center, did our own stage show. We're just doing things, being motivated. Of course, I've had some, survival jobs along the way, but have been lucky enough for the most part. 95% of my career has been immersed in particularly sketch comedy and improv and working in this industry. So I feel very, very, very fortunate. But I think, to your point, there's a lot of sacrifices too, right, along the way. Yeah.
One other thing, there's this idea of, not one other thing, there's so many more things that we can talk about because everybody, I mean, as a human, very multifaceted. I was interested in the fact that in your bio, like people pick out things in their bio. So there's two things I wanted to bring up really quick. One was teaching comedy. You were sent by the U.S. Embassy. That's the other thing too, that to realize that comedy is not just for laughs. So you were an official representative of the U.S. Embassy to like Latvia and Norway to teach comedy. How was that? And what was your role there?
Amazing. I was part of a small delegation. There were 4 of us that were brought by the embassy to, essentially we were brought to Latvia. And then there was a very tiny comedy troupe that was just starting to emerge and get popular. They were doing sketches and improv in Riga, Latvia, and then they tour around Latvia a little bit at coffee houses and stuff. And the embassy became aware of them, and the embassy brought us over to meet with them, to work with them. We learned what they were doing. We taught them what we do, and then we did co-performances together. So I got back up and performed a little bit.
What language are you working in? In English?
It was, well, it's so amazing because after the fall of the Soviet Union, everybody started learning English. So there was a divide. If you're 20 or younger in Latvia, you speak fluent English. You speak English fluently. So a lot of our audiences were young and they understood English. And then the folks that were 20 and up maybe could understand some of it. And then also we would switch off. So we might do a improv in English, and then the Latvian group would do an improv in native language, right? And then so we were switching back and forth like that. So it was really, really cool. And we learned a lot from each other, and it was a wonderful exchange. And then we hopped over to Norway and did a little bit over there. There was a bigger scene there in Oslo, but we were able to do the same there, do some workshops, learn from them, perform with them. It was amazing.
So I don't know if you just heard that. It sounds really exciting. And I love the whole idea of cultural exchange and how laughter can bring people together, for sure. You may have just heard the alarm. I want to make sure. So the alarm means that it is time for our flash photo stories. So flash photo stories means that, Mark, you have sent a few photos ahead of time. So I'm going to flash the photos on the screen and you're going to give me a couple sentence story on each. So let's go ahead and share these to our stream. So because again, I love this format for really learning a lot more about you. And there's your friend, Keegan Michael Key there on the left. What's going on here?
Yeah, we are at what is called the Detroit Party. It was a event we held here in Los Angeles. In the middle of that picture are Mark Evan Jackson and Beth Hagenlocker. They, amongst other things, created a nonprofit called the Detroit Creativity Project. We're all from the second city of Detroit, originally live in Los Angeles now, and they raise money and raise funds and organize artistic and creative classes in the Detroit public schools through this organization. And that's a fundraiser event we have.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's great that they're in the schools. So that young people can get exposure as well. What's going on here? Okay,
here's the 313 Improv Troupe, in which I am a member. All of us came up through that same second city, Detroit world, and we're all very close friends and spend holidays and birthdays and shows together here out in Los Angeles when I perform occasionally in improv. But it's important. I think it's important to have a crew in this industry. It's a tough business. It's important to have a crew of people that are allies in the industry and people that you love outside of it as well.
You know, I think that message is important. So you stay in touch with this group of people ongoing, correct?
Ongoing.
You know, that's true. I think for any industry you're in, people sometimes call it like finding your tribe or your people, but building that network, even if it's virtually with everything we've had with COVID, it's just more fun to work with other people.
Absolutely. And improv and sketch is group based. You know, that's one thing I love
Mhm.
about it is like, it's unlike stand-up comedy or storytelling where you're up on stage alone, which is its own, those are their own amazing art forms. But I prefer to work in groups. I prefer to work on groups. Here's a big group. This is another international troupe. This was a few weeks of workshops
Mhm.
that I taught alongside Masi Oka, who is sitting next to me there. Some people might recognize him as the character of Hero from the NBC show Heroes. But Masi and I co-taught for several weeks workshops for current comedy stars in Japan that work with Yoshimoto Comedy, which is the main comedy company there. Another very cool cultural exchange. A lot of big differences between our culture and Japanese culture that we tried to merge and explore and work with as we taught each other comedy.
You know, one thing I think of in the US, it is so common. Like, we totally make fun of leaders. Like, the more power someone has, the more we're going to make fun of them. And I know culturally in Japan, there's a little bit more deference to hierarchy.
Yes.
So did you see that play out in terms of
That was
what
the
things?
biggest difference. When doing improvisation here in the States, if you think of Whose Line Is It Anyway, for example, you say to the audience, somebody shout out a suggestion. Well, we couldn't do that the same way in Japan because you say to the audience, somebody shout out a suggestion. And because of the social hierarchy, everyone that is younger is supposed to wait to defer to the older people in the audience to first have the opportunity to shout out a suggestion and or decline shouting out a suggestion and give permission to the younger folks to shout out a suggestion. So there were things like that culturally were very, very interesting to work with.
You know, it's interesting. I had one experience, not the same, but comparable to that idea as well. Culturally, the idea of saving face or sort of wanting to know answers before you shout it out. Doing a focus group once at Department of Aviation for Japanese travelers. Somebody called ahead of time and wanted to know what the focus group questions were going to be ahead of time so they could prepare the answers, which of course, culturally, no, that's like exactly the opposite of the idea, but it's really fun. So you had to change. How did you modify then? How did you change knowing that cultural difference?
Gently. I mean, essentially, we were asking them to come along for the ride with us. And I don't think I could have done this myself, but I think Masi being there with me helped a lot, where he nicely said, can we make this a safe place? And could all of the elders right now give permission to everyone else for the entirety of the time to shout out suggestions? And the elders permitted it. There was still resistance though, but the elders permitted it and we proceeded.
I love that example from how you drew from your in-country partner to then bridge that, to make that bridge for the cross-cultural exchange on that. That's really a fascinating process. And I think we have one more. And what's happening here?
Well, this is, of course, is me with my very close personal friend, the president. He was vice president at the time. And I said, Joe, you got to run for president. He said, I'm not sure. I said, you must. He took my advice and look, it all worked out.
Fantastic. So this is the moment where you convinced him to do it.
This is the moment I convinced him. I had the opportunity to meet then Vice President Biden on a couple different occasions. These are quick photo ops, but I have to say, he in person, and you hear this a lot about a lot of politicians, even being in the entertainment industry my whole life, in person, one of the most charismatic people I've ever met. Like when you see him live, it's like incredible. So it's a pleasure to get to meet him on a couple of occasions and snap a picture.
Listen to you. Let me just drop it in on a couple of occasions. So it's not just it's not just one photo op. Like now you've had a few times. Well, go, Mark. That's fantastic. All right, Mark, now we are back. So thank you for that. And thank you for sharing those photos. I love how you can get such a whole story and depth just from looking at these snap moments from your life. And now it is time for our flash exercise. So this part of the show, this has to do with, so people learn differently. Some people will listen to us talk and they'll be like, I understand everything that the two of you are talking about. Some people are more kinesthetic. So they like to see movement and motion, and that's how they understand what's going on. So what I am going to do is I have selected a specific exercise that really embodies the theme of our show. So I'm going to invite you to do it with me. I'm going to invite anyone who's watching as well, now or after the fact, to join me. I'm going to make myself large for a second, and then I'll bring you back, and we'll see if you can guess why I picked this exercise. Okay. So here, oh yeah, it's like a game show almost. All right. So here's our exercise today. So our exercise, you do need to stand for this. What you're going to do, and sorry, my head's cut off for a second, but you're going to so starting with your feet together, just kind of heel toe wider until your feet are as wide as they can be on either side of you. So wide stance. We're going to come on down into you're down into a lunge. So pelvis is tilted, knees press out over second and third toes. Your toes are out at 45 degrees. Clasp your hands in front of you. If you have headlights on your hips, I want you to keep them front. And now you're going to lunge left and right as you rotate your body. So this is a great exercise for your, here, I'll come down lower so you can see me. It's for your legs, your thighs, glutes and quads on those lunges, but then you're also getting that great rotation through your obliques. So Mark is doing a fantastic job of that. Mark, show us again what you're doing.
I know it's a weird angle, but I'm doing it.
You're doing it. Yay. All right. So now here's my question for you. Do you have any idea why I picked this exercise for you and your sketch school?
No, I want to know.
Okay, so this is really funny. Do you know, if you Google, because I couldn't think of an exercise, so I Googled sketch aerobics just to see what came up. And what came up is a website that is actually sketchaerobics.com. I swear to God, if you have an idea for a business, you can do anything. So this is a person who built fitness into helping people loosen up on design. So watch this. So this exercise, if you get 2 magic markers and then do your exercise, look what's happened. You're sketching stuff. You can do it as a circle and a thing. So that is literally sketch aerobics.
I love it.
Oh my gosh. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. It was so much fun talking to you, and such really an inspiration. I love how you've connected everything across your life, built it into this business that's everything that you love best. It's just fantastic inspiration for all who are watching. So thanks for sharing with us today.
What an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. I hope to say, and I'll send you the stuff about the Satire Festival.
My new friends.
Yeah, exactly. Bye-bye.